Browsing notifications on the Book of Face as one does, a post had caught my eye this week on the Saturn Junkyard, the home of the Sean Connery-loving gamer and all of us. It was a user pleading and fawning with the former gods of Sega, can we please have a new Virtua Cop? So there I was beginning to thumb and type in a reply, since no home version of the 2003 title of Virtua Cop 3 has ever been released at the home. Though I do think Virtua Cop would make a rather interesting experience if you take the gameplay style of Blood and Truth, which was the London-based cover and move VR shooter, but you transport it out to Los Angeles for a Bad Boys-like experience. I think that can be pretty awesome and rather interesting. So there I was tapping in that kind of sentence of how Bad Boys really was a product of the 90s, and so was Virtua. Then it dawned on me with a cavalcade of thoughts, is that Virtua is such a 90s word, it's so rad, and I kinda wondered, did the brand get stuck there as well? With this video, we explore the world of Virtua. The early 90s was cool, I hear you say. Time of Super Soakers, Saved by the Bell, Nirvana, Reboot, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and the less said about the Lawnmower Man the better. But bright colours, and who could forget the arcades, which is where our tale begins. Sega doing well in the home market and arcades, a two-headed success story. This was a real time of innovation, development teams pushing technology, striving for innovation, and the arcade was their canvas. In the summer of 1992, Yu Suzuki's famed Amusement Machine Research Development Studio 2, better known as AM2, unveiled Virtua Racing, a fully polygon 3D Formula 1 themed arcade racer, introducing the ability to switch between camera views with exceptional speed and graphics, pushing an astounding 9,000 polygons per second, using what will be referred to as the Model 1 board. Virtua Racing dazzled all who saw it. A number of arcade iterations were released over its popularity cycle, including a DX version, before rolling out Virtua Formula in 1993, effectively an expanded DX version of Virtua Racing. All versions can be linked up for up to an 8-player race. It's also worth noting an optional additional spectator screen could also be added, showing replay action shots of what was occurring during the live race. A virtual sportscast hosted by virtual commentator Ver McPolygon. Who'd have thought people would want to watch people play games like a sport? IGN rated Virtua Racing the third most influential racing game behind Pole Position and Gran Turismo. Sega's AM2 in 1993 kept the Virtua coming with the seminal Virtua Fighter. The first 3D polygon fighting game, it set the standards for a realistic fight. Rather than fireball throwing and gravity-defying spinning bird kicks, you say that, but you can jump in the air like 20 feet. Utilising Sega's accessible approach, easy to pick up and play, where depth and nuance is found deeper over time, with a control system of punch, kick and guard to initiate combos and grapples. Virtua Fighter is the holder of multiple Guinness World Records, the influence behind Sony moving their 2D-based conceptual PlayStation to a 3D system, and notable industry members citing Virtua Fighter as the inspiration behind Tomb Raider and even Quake.
We're talking, 93, got Virtua Fighter and Virtua Racing, all these great games that Sega are venturing into.
It was very much about immersion, very much about reality, as opposed to the games that we had been playing. And I was thinking about this as well, in terms of the avatars on the screen. When we were in the 16-bit era, when we were on the Mega Drive and its equivalents, the figures on the screen were the size of small toy soldiers. When we moved into the virtual world, the avatars on the screen got bigger and more personal and more singular. So there was something bigger, something more real and more immersive about the Virtua titles than what had been previously available on the 16-bit.
Lockheed Martin's application and texture mapping technology being brought into Sega's AM2, implementing into Virtua Fighter, that then set the bar even higher, with each then a successive Virtua Fighter title doing so as well, making considerable strides in gameplay revisions over its predecessor. Virtua Fighter 5, on initial release in the arcades in 2006, continued receiving updates and refinements as far as 2015, 9 years after its initial release. In those mid-90s years, Virtua just kept coming, There was Virtua Striker, Virtua Cop, Virtua Tennis, Virtua Fishing, Virtua Health, Virtua Cooking. Okay, 2 of them aren't real, but you can easily see that they could have been. The Virtua Health one actually is, although it's completely unrelated. The Virtua Striker is extremely playable, as are its successors. Now, I don't really follow football, but I'm happy to pick up Virtua Striker and enjoy the action. Virtua Cop, which was the inspiration behind this video, sent players to the LA-inspired streets with Michael Rage Hardy, James Smarty Cools. It's your job to shoot down a seemingly non-stop onslaught of gun-wielding masked enemies who have no problem firing at the police. With the faithful blue stunner in hand, it's time to take those streets back from the crime syndicate, inventively known as the Evil Corporation.
Virtua Cop came out. Oh, Virtua Cop. Proper gun blast in action. That's when I really started to take note of 3D graphics and Sega. For me, that just brought to life everything I loved about computer games.
Virtua as an adjective I'd never heard before. I'd never heard of a Virtua Cop or a Virtua Fighter. So there was something new and fresh and 90s and exciting about it, and with a bit of chewed thrown in there.
It introduced great strides of evolution in gameplay here, as Virtua Cop had an in-motion first-person perspective and a fully polygonal game space. Unlike other light gun shooters at the time, where seemingly there's multiple people hiding and popping out from behind barrels and walls, Virtua Cop had a realistic sense of enemy placement. The inclusion of justice shots, while you could indeed shoot your enemy full of lead, and they can disappear, you could alternatively shoot them in the hand for virtual rehabilitation. And Martin Hollis of Rare presented a press conference at the 2004 European Developers Forum, where he cites directly the Virtua Cop and how much it influenced the development of GoldenEye 007 for the N64. Virtua Cop was part of the awesome triple arcade Christmas combo in the winter of 1996 for the Sega Saturn, alongside Sega Rally and Virtua Fighter 2. Followed up by Virtua Cop 2, with the inclusion now of a female player, Janet Marshall. She didn't have a nickname, which did not go unnoticed by the official UK Sega Saturn magazine faithful, who through suggestions and careful deliberation became dubbed Janet Hubcaps Marshall. The Saturn stunner I always found was a little too light as a teen, so I actually sought to add a weight to the handle, and in opening the light gun I discovered that inside is a perfect slot for a 9-volt battery inside. It's quite possible there was to be rumble or a kickback, or maybe even a speaker inside the official Sega Saturn light gun at some point, that still made it to the moulding stage. Virtua troubles. Understanding that Sega's prized flagship team must have been extremely busy during this whole period in the early to mid-90s, with the creation of so many IPs and arcade titles, Burning Rivals, Daytona USA, Sega then brought forward its next generation hardware to market.
Introducing Sega Saturn. Hit it.
Which then it wanted to bring further forward to launch ahead of Sony's foot in the door, so coming out even earlier than expected. AM2 were tasked with bringing a quicker turnaround to some of its home conversions of its arcade titles to the planet-named home system. Daytona USA and Virtua Fighter, whilst mirroring its arcade counterparts in many respects, perhaps did not receive their full attention and did little to expand on them for the home audience. And going head-to-head with Sony and arcade rival Namco, firmly now in bed with the PlayStation, producing greatly enhanced versions of Tekken, and with Ridge Racer running on PlayStation-based System 11 hardware at the arcade, the port was a near one-for-one, as were Sega's efforts to bring its key titles to launch seemed lackluster. Had Virtua Fighter Remix been the home launch edition, with perhaps the inclusion of additional characters, and Saturn Daytona had more development time, the wins may have been different for its gamer perception. With the arcade industry turning to more lucrative means of money in the form of pachinko and gambling fruit machines, the arcade gaming scene in the late 90s was changing. The powerful home consoles bringing unique experiences and games with replayability beyond the short coin-swallowing blasts, as well as the arcade titles, kept players at home. Virtua Fighter 3 also suffered from the bare-bones launch treatment on the Dreamcast, as the original Virtua Fighter did on the Saturn, despite the inclusion of the popular in Japan King of Fighters style team battle mode. Virtua seemed stuck. Stepping up to the plate was Power Smash Tennis, developed by fellow Sega team AM3, released internationally as Virtua Tennis to arcades, and released on the powerful new Naomi hardware and Dreamcast. It performed very well and prompted the development of a sequel, Power Smash 2, with now the inclusion of female players and improved graphics. Internationally once again branded as Virtua Tennis 2, in North America going under the Sega Sports banner as Tennis 2K2, and remains today one of the Dreamcast's treasured titles. And not to be overlooked, there was a British take, a counter to Virtua. Not virtual, but actual. Actua. The Actua Sports series saw the mega successful Actua Soccer, Actua Golf, Actua Tennis, Actua Pool, Actua Ice Hockey from Sheffield-based studio Gremlin, who these days are better known as Sumo Digital. Sega's Virtua lineage continues only scantily into the millennium years. An arcade-only release, Virtua NBA from Amusement Vision, came out in 2000. Bacha Ashirito 2K from Sega's Hitmaker studio was named Virtua Athlete 2000 for its international release, which then in 2002 saw an arcade release, branded as just Virtua Athlete. And a home version of this was included as a bundle with Athlete Kings and Winter Heat for the PlayStation 2 for the Sega Ages Volume 15.
The term Virtua became ever so slightly dated and ever so slightly of a time of the 90s, as it were.
Cop 3 saw a shining glimpse in 2003. Virtua Tennis has rolled out a number of titles, but the last multi-format release being Virtua Tennis 4 in 2012. Virtua Fighter's dedicated core base keeps the beat 'em up alive. Now we've seen strong reinventions of King of Fighters, Street Fighter, Soul Calibur, and definitely Tekken in recent years. It would be a shame not to see Virtua Fighter not take back its most prominent mantle, but what it would take would have to be exceptional.
The one Virtua that I would really love to see again, as you've said, is Virtua Cop. That would be the one that I would really want to see a sequel to if we were going to have a sequel to anything.
Virtua Cop is my pick for best Virtua series. Sega, sort it out. We need a new one. Come on, it's been too long.
The very word Virtua embodies that 90s optimism, but I think the word itself comes from virtual, which means not quite fully formed. It implies potential it could almost be.
Virtual to Virtua, it became an adjective rather than an adverb. It's not about describing a verb, it was about describing the noun, so it became the Virtua Fighter, or the Virtua Striker, or the Virtua Cop.
Or maybe it comes from virtue, which is, when I think about it, it's like goodness, excellence, rectitude, principles. And on that note, that's exactly how I see the Virtua titles. They exemplify all of those very qualities. So until next time, I'm Defined Kristian, and Sega, if you're listening, come on, get yourself some Virtua collection packs out there. You know, put them together, put your Virtua Racing together, your Virtua Cops together, your Virtua Fighters together. You will please a lot of people, a lot of nostalgia fans would absolutely love it, and you will create a whole new generation of appreciation. Until then.